Life Fully Lives monthly Google Hangout. This month we have a special guest for you. We have Peter Voog and Chris Lockhead. Our topic is building a legendary business and how to succeed being a successful entrepreneur. These guys are incredible. I'm just going to take 1 minute to fill you full of other information before we get to them, but you're in for a real treat. I want to let you know next month, February 10th, our Google Hangout will be on budgeting and managing your finances, whether you're deep in debt or way on your way towards critical mass. We're going to have some keen insights on how you can win at the money game. That's February 10th at 4 p.m. And you can register for that right now on our website. And you can also register right now for our conference, One Life Fully Live conference in Philadelphia, which is May 16th and 17th. And it's called Finding Your Flow Ability. And that will be our first East Coast conference. But this conference is this Google Hangout is all about business and entrepreneurship. And as I said, we have two special guests. We're going to lead it off with Peter Voog, who happened to have Entrepreneur Magazine's most read article of 2014. They're a recent author of a book you can all pick up called 6 Months to Six Figures. He's going to be talking about that. He's going to talk about how you can kill it in business. Then we're going to have Chris Lockhead interview him, then have Chris add his own thoughts on entrepreneurship and business. And Chris is an old friend of One Life Fully Live, been with us from the start. And we also have an old friend, Celeste Noel, who has a question for our panelists today, as well as Gonzalo Corzo, who's also going to ask a question. So, and then we're going to open it up to questions from our One Life audience. So this is going to be a great event. I'm glad you're tuned in. Please pass this to your friends after the event that want to learn more about how to be business and entrepreneur people. So without further ado, please take it away, Peter Voog.
Thank you so much, Tim. I appreciate that intro, and I'm excited to add as much value as I possibly can. And I really want to talk about entrepreneurship. And I think there's certain truths that people need to understand about entrepreneurship and becoming a legendary entrepreneur before they really take it to the next level, because I think mindset comes first and results come second. So, and I think expressing your desire for entrepreneurship like 15, 20 years ago would have created some laughter and an assumption that you're crazy, right? 15 years ago, if you're like, I'm going to start my own business and I'm going to live based on the income I create from my own intelligence and my connections, I think people would laugh and say, no, you got to get a stable job. But entrepreneurship now has become one of the most respected industries and professions in the world, and I think it's the new American dream. And I think dream jobs are disappearing fast, and creating your ideal opportunity and creating your ideal vision for what you want based on who you are and the lifestyle you want to live and the people you want to help is the new norm. And a lot of people get into entrepreneurship or want to reach the level 10 success, but they have a blurred perspective of what it really takes. And they think all they need is passion and hard work, but the reality is those people are in for a pretty rough ride. So I want to get into kind of the truths of entrepreneurship, and we'll kind of go from there, and I'm looking forward to connecting with Chris as well and getting some dialogue going on, but I just want to add as much value as humanly possible to these amazing viewers and listeners as well. So I really believe you can either play it safe or you can become successful, but you can't do both. The first thing I'd say is in entrepreneurship, I think failure is the only thing that's guaranteed. Michael Jordan, the epitome of success, used to talk about how he's failed over and over and over again, and that's why he succeeded. I think if you understand that failure is a good thing because it sharpens your perspective, it gives you more intelligence to create future plans and preparation, and successful people see failure differently than the majority, I think. And if you can stay loyal to your journey and your business when nothing's going your way, I think you have a competitive advantage over most people. And instead of taking failure personally, using it to take better and more intelligent action in the future, I think that's a huge key. Because for me, when I was stressed and broke and struggling, I got into direct sales, and I was 22 years old, and I had about $8,000 saved from my sales job and just from my previous entrepreneur journey, and all of it went to nothing, and I was stressed and broke and struggling and discouraged, and I didn't have money to eat. I was living in a one-bedroom apartment, and what really changed was my perspective on success, and I realized that I needed to shift my circle of influence to start developing better habits. I was inspired, but I didn't have the habits to sustain that inspiration, and my failure was adding to my hunger, and that's, I think, what people need to realize is failure needs to add to your hunger to make better choices. The second thing I think, as far as entrepreneurship goes, is habits trump inspiration. I talk about in my book that inspiration is needed to create consistent action, but your habits are going to define your success. And if you go to events, Tim and Chris, and you guys have done this, where after an event or a seminar where you spend $2,000 to $5,000, 95% of the people there, they forget what they learned, and 2 weeks later they're in the exact same spot. It's because habits trump inspiration, and inspiration feels good in the moment but doesn't produce past the activity producing it. And I think the biggest inspiration of all is seeing progress and results. So understanding that habits are needed more than inspiration, I think, is a huge key to success as well. And I used to hear a lot of people talk about, I don't have enough time, I don't have money, I don't have experience, I'm from the wrong area, my people aren't motivated, I don't have the right technology. But I think resourcefulness is the ultimate resource as an entrepreneur. And the people that are the most resourceful, whether they have a lot of resources or not, are the ones that thrive the most. I think the resource belief structure of people thinking they need more resources to be successful is holding a lot of people back, I think, from really crushing it. And the greatest entrepreneurs, I don't know if you guys agree or not, are the ones that can maximize the resources they do have. And one of the biggest keys is internal emotions. If you don't have the money but you're creative enough, you can find a way to get the money, right? If you're struggling and you don't have many connections or a great circle of influence, if you're driven enough and you have enough hunger, you can find a way to connect with anybody as well. And that leads me to my next one, is your circle of influence will make or break you. If you elevate your circle of influence, your standards, your mindset, your attitude, and eventually your results will follow. And to be honest, if you hang out with 5 successful people, you'll eventually be the 6th. You hang out with 5 millionaires, you'll eventually be the 6th. And if you hang out with 5 idiots, I mean, it's inevitable, right? Hang out with 5 broke people, you'll probably be the 6th. So I think success rises and falls on the circle of influence that you're around, and the bigger the goals, obviously the higher level of circle of influence you need to impact your thinking, because really you can hang out with 2 types of people. You can hang out with people that hold you accountable and hold you to high standards, or you can hang out with people that let you off the hook and bring you down to their level. So when I was stressed, the first thing I did when I was broke and struggling was I made a list of the top 5 people in my industry that I needed to reach out to immediately and get mentored by, so they can help me get to the next step of my success. And I think the last point of entrepreneurship for me is it's not easy, but it's worth it. If becoming an entrepreneur was easy, everybody would be doing it, and it wouldn't be worth much. Because the moment you pursue something legendary like we talk about, you're going to have big challenges, because they're there to test your faith to see if you want it bad enough. And sadly, most people, when they go through a couple challenges, they shrink back to that level they were before the challenge, and then they settle for something that they know they're worthy of more, right? So you must focus on the rewards on the other side of the struggle, all the reasons, with deep precision, think about the goals and your ideal outcomes, and focus on the legacy you want to build, the income you want to make, the lifestyle you want to have, the trips you want to take your family on, being there for your kids. I think if you visualize how good it's going to feel when you start accomplishing your goals, start thinking about being your own boss, start thinking about controlling your own schedule, inspiring others, I think that's a big, big step to find that inner drive to take the action past the challenge. And chaos is guaranteed in entrepreneurship, but if you really want entrepreneur greatness, you have to get past the chaos and stay focused on your vision versus your current feelings that you experience. So That's my take on entrepreneurship. And to be honest, I think people don't know how strong they are until being strong is the only option they have, right? So when I didn't feel like I was built for entrepreneurship, I had to make it work. I had no other options. Then I started figuring out how strong I was once I focused on things that I needed to focus on. But I only got that way through reaching out to top people in my industry. And I would tell everybody it's worth it to build a lifestyle and become legendary in entrepreneurship because there's nothing like it. That's really some of the thoughts I have. Hope that helps.
Thanks, Peter. I have an opening question for you, which is according to the U.S. Census Bureau, the startup rate in America is actually down now. And while it's inspiring to think about being an entrepreneur, and in a lot of ways when we talk about the tools for being an entrepreneur, the fact that many of those tools are better in our country today than ever before, entrepreneurship is actually down. New startups are down. Why do you think that is?
I think one reason is it's not natural to prepare and to research, to look at competitors, to figure out what your absolute strengths are and learn how to delegate your weaknesses. I think that's harder, and I think the easy part, Chris, is just jumping in and having passion and going for it. So that's what everyone does. They do what's natural and what's easier, and they think just passion and ambition is what it takes. But you need a lot of preparation, a lot of strategy, and you need the right people in your corner. So I think if they had a checklist of what to think about and what could go wrong and thinking about the objections before they come up, I think that's a huge key. And one thing that I teach young startups too is find a group of people like your association that has already been in that area you're in and ask them and have them on your advisory board to talk about what they've gone through and what they would do differently and how the market's changing and what their competitors are doing. I mean, I think if they just did that, Chris, that would help their rate of success. Would you agree?
I think that's certainly part of it. You talked earlier in the beginning about sort of dealing with failure. Why do you think it is that people are much more motivated by the downside than the upside?
Well, I think it's easier to be motivated by that, and I think our society has made it okay to focus on the negative or be mediocre, but I don't have a specific answer. I think it's very, very tough to focus on what you don't want versus what you want, but I think the reason is their past beliefs. I think the influence they're around. I think parents play a big role in that. I think some schools play a big role in that. I don't think business schools or a lot of schools that I've spoke at or researched are teaching people how to thrive in the new economy, which is one of the reasons why I want to help younger entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs in general understand what areas to focus on, how to use failure for future preparation and things like that. So I don't have a specific answer, but I think it's based on their past beliefs, it's based on society, it's based on what they're putting in their mind and not having enough of the people that believe in them around them.
Great. Tim, is there anything else you want to add with Peter?
No, why don't you jump into your piece on this, Chris, and then we can open it up to the community for questions. Did you have any other comments based on that, Peter?
No, I'm excited. I've heard a lot about Chris, and I'm excited to hear him spit some fire.
Well, I hope it's fire and not crapola. Okay, so I want to get into some specifics. The first thing I'd like to share with you, my background's in the technology field, and a lot of the thinking I'm going to share with you comes from my work at Play Bigger and is influenced by what goes on in the technology world. But that said, I think it's very applicable to almost any kind of industry. So the first thing I'd share with you is if you're going to start a business, you have to be very clear about what the goal is. And any of you have participated before in One Life activities and events, you know goal setting is a big part of what we talk about. So let me be clear what we at Play Bigger think is the goal that every entrepreneur should have when they start a business. And that is to become what you might call the category king in your space, in your market, in your category. And what we mean by that is if you look in market after market after market, what you'll find in many of them, and in the technology industry it's almost always the case, is that one company dominates the space. That is to say, they are the leader. They're what you could think of as the king of that category. And so we think the objective of every business should be to become the number one company in their market category. Said a different way, why would you start a business with the objective of becoming number 2 or number 3 or some other sucky goal? For those of you who are in the technology industry, what I would share with you is that we did a research report in November of last year, which you're welcome to download for free on playbigger.com, on a metric called time to market cap. And time to market cap is the speed with which companies are increasing in value. And we looked at venture technology companies who are backed by venture capitalists, started since 2000 up through to the middle of last year. And what we found is essentially 2 incredibly important things. Number 1, the speed with which companies are growing in value today is 3 times faster than it was at the beginning of the century. That is category king companies are growing the value, the market cap of their company 3 times faster than they used to. And number 2 is, in every single space that we looked at, what we discovered is the category king, the leader in the market, takes 70 to 80% of the market cap of the space. So there's one company that extracts the vast majority of the economics. And while that's not true in some other industries, even if you look at local small businesses, what you'll find is in many cases there's one company, one outfit that stands apart both from a value point of view, a market share, revenue, and therefore profit point of view than any other company in the space. So we think the objective is to be that category king. So if you agree with that and you say, okay, well then how do I do that? There's essentially 3 critical things to focus on. Number 1, the company that designs the market, designs the category, is best positioned to dominate it. So a simple example you might be able to relate to is a company called Uber. Based on our research, they're the fastest growing time to market cap company in American history. They're valued at $60 billion today, and they're about 6 years old. And they designed a new category in personal transportation. If you think about it, before there was limos, there was taxis, there was public transportation, and various iterations of those models. And Uber created this whole new model, kind of in between what a taxi is and what a limo is, deeply powered by technology. So you and I on our smartphones can immediately request a car, we can see where the closest one is, and they come to get us. And that's made Uber a category king in record time from a time to market cap perspective. And the reason for that, or one of the key reasons for that, is they created a new category in personal transportation using the smartphone. So whatever your business is that you're thinking of starting, even if it's a restaurant, if you've got an idea, you have to look at what makes you different and what can make you a new category of restaurant, such that essentially the objective is you have no competitors. Uber only really has one direct competitor. That company got created after them. And category kings, if they create a new space, by definition, they're not going to have competitors, and they have an opportunity to do something really legendary. So that's the first one. Be the company that designs a new paradigm for a new category. If you want to dominate the category, you got to design it. So that's the first one. The second one is you got to have a legendary company, and specifically a legendary product. And so the way you deliver, the customer service experience that you have, the uniqueness of your product and your offering, those things are not to be trifled with. You have to have a very distinctive, very unique product that stands out in the marketplace. And you have to have a company capability that allows you to scale and sell and service those customers so that you can dominate your market space. Whether your objective is world domination, like Mark Zuckerberg's at Facebook, or whether you want to be the most dominant pizza parlor in a 3-block radius, the objective is still the same. I want to be the company that first designs the category and kind of reimagines what's possible in a market. Second, I want to create a product that delivers on that category design. And third, I want to have a company that can execute and scale and deliver the kind of sales and customer service that customers are looking for today. Now, the last component I'm going to talk about building a category king is, okay, so if I want to build a legendary company, a legendary product, and a legendary category so that I become the king, then what else do you need to know? We think there's 3 additional things. The first one is focus, as you're working on your business idea, focus on what makes you different. And when we talk to entrepreneurs and we get them to write up on a whiteboard, what are all the things that make your business different? Invariably what they write up is a list of things that make them better. And it's important to understand the distinction between better and different. If you come to market, particularly in an existing market, with a new product making a claim that it's better than the competitors, you're almost certainly going to fail. As a matter of fact, Microsoft has invested $10 billion in their search engine Bing. And as a result of that huge investment, Google is suffering today with 67% market share in search. And my point is, with $10 billion, Microsoft can't win an argument against Google in the minds of customers that Bing is better than Google. So if you're starting a pizza parlor or a plumbing business or a software company, in relation to your competitors, if you make an argument that you're better, if Microsoft can't beat Google, then you probably can't beat entrenched competitors. So you have to focus on what makes you different and force the customer to choose between your difference and what the competitors are offering. The second component is articulate that difference in something we call a point of view. And a point of view is basically one about framing a problem. The company that frames the problem best wins. Because customers think if you articulate my problem better than anyone else, you must have a solution. Number 2, the vision for the future. So here's the problem, and here's the vision. And number 3, how your company, your product, or your service helps bridge the gap between the problem and the solution. That's what a point of view is. And at a simple level, if I say to you, 2 companies, American Airlines and Southwest Airlines, which company has a point of view and which one doesn't? The answer is intuitively obvious. One company is governed by a point of view, that is to say they have a true north, a perspective and a belief system that allows them to operate much differently, and one company is run by assholes with spreadsheets. And it's very obvious. It's very obvious that Southwest is run by a point of view, and we know how they run American Airlines. All you have to do is do business with them once. And so not only using that point of view to position your company and articulate why you can help customers solve a problem, but also use it as your true north for how you govern your company. And then the last component of building a category king is execution. Peter talked about failure. And what execution is really about is executing with power and violence and not being afraid to fail. No one's going to get it right 100%. There's always an argument for more analysis. But the most legendary companies execute, execute, execute. Patton famously said, a good plan executed with violence today is better than a great plan tomorrow. So in completion, as you're thinking about starting a business or building your business, number 1, make the declaration you want to be the category king. You want to be the leader in your market. And to do that, you're going to focus on your product, your company, and most importantly, designing your category, teaching the market a new way to think about buying your product or service. And when you peel back the onion a little bit further, 3 additional components. What makes you different versus better? How do you articulate that difference by declaring a problem with a point of view and using that point of view to govern your company? And number 3, executing like Patton. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Tim. Thank you.
Wow, great stuff, Chris. That was very, very powerful. So let's take, I'm thinking of a few people in our community that may be listening right now. One is like an event planner. Her name's Shay Wheat. She's going to be helping us with our next 2 conferences. And let's say she wants to grow her business, or Emily Webb has her online business. Give me an example of how they can differentiate themselves and not be better, but kind of what's the word? Disrupt their business and become legendary.
So there's a couple ways. Number 1, what problem are you solving? So if you think about the event planning business, it's a business I actually know. Most people in that business think their job is to produce a well-run event. And there's a definition of what a well-run event looks like. And we've all been to well-run events, and we've been to some less well-run events, and hopefully our One Life events are getting better and better every year. But the reality is, if you really take a big step back, just having a well-run event is not what it's about. The event producer has some kind of an objective, some kind of a goal that they're trying to produce. And the way they produce that goal is by creating not an event, but an experience for people. And if you deliver that experience, then the people who participate in that experience are left in a different place than they were when it started. And so if I was an event planner, I would take a step back from just the obvious components of running a great event, which of course you have to have, but that's table stakes. And I would think very strategically about, okay, well, why do people really produce events? And why do people want to go to events? And what is about me as an event planner that allows me to produce events that produce specific outcomes that make a difference for people? And I would try to figure out how I'm different in that regard, and then I would evangelize that difference in a point of view. And I would never force anybody to have a conversation about comparing me to some other event planner. If somebody said to me, well, you know, we're thinking about you and we're thinking about Jimmy. And I'd say, well, you know, Jimmy's really great, but Jimmy and I are in different businesses. We have a very different point of view about what an event needs to be. And if you want what Jimmy does, you should go do business with him. And if you're interested, I'll share with you what our point of view is on how to build a legendary event. And in that way, begin to create distinction and difference. And then from there, I'd roll to whatever my point of view is. And, you know, she's going to have to figure that out on her own. But the key being, look at what makes you different and design your offering, design your category around that difference, and don't play a Me Too game with some other event company. Does that help, Tim? I think you're on mute, buddy.
Yeah, nope, Andy sent me a text to make sure I unmuted, so I'm good. Yes, that helps greatly, and I take it that for the florist or the plumber, your answer would be the same. Don't just be a great florist, don't just be a great plumber. Create an exceptional experience that you create raving fans who tell people.
Yeah, and on top of that, to be even more explicit, in the mind of the market or the customer, create a from to. What I mean by that specifically is, if I was starting a plumbing business, I'd figure out what makes me different. I would reimagine the category along those lines, evangelize a problem for customers, and when in discussion with people, and they said, well, you know, we're interested in hiring you as a plumber to come in and help us build a new house or fix our plumbing or whatever the case may be, I would have a conversation with them about how we're a different kind of plumber. And I would have words around that. I might use the word plumber, but I would use a different descriptor as to, well, we're an X kind of a plumber. There would be a different descriptor for plumbing that I would have that would speak to our different approach about plumbing. You know, I'll give you a simple example everybody here can relate to. Netflix is the most successful digital media distribution company in the world. They started off in business with a competitor called Blockbuster, but they refused to compete with Blockbuster in the legacy video rental category. They said, we are going to use the internet and we're going to use technology to deliver movies and entertainment differently. And we are going to force customers to choose. If you want to go to the video store, find parking, go in, look around the place, figure out they don't have the movie that you want anyway, rent some other movie, rent that movie and pay late fees 3 days later, then you just keep doing that. Or if you want a whole other experience, come to Netflix. And Blockbuster Video today is bankrupt. But they're not bankrupt because Netflix attacked them head on. They're bankrupt because Netflix was successful in redesigning the category. They taught you and I as customers, we call it conditioning the market. They conditioned the market to stop doing it the old way, that's the from, and to go to a website, order the videos you want, originally with CDs and now direct with streaming, and that's the to. And so by taking the old paradigm and reimagining it in this new way, you force a choice for customers. Do you want it the old way or do you want it this new way? That's what I mean about designing a new category and focusing on what makes you different. Don't play the game designed by your legacy competitors, because if you play somebody else's game, you're destined to lose.
That's brilliant, Chris. I'm sure the CEO of American Airlines should have you on speed dial. So,
well,
unfortunately, he probably doesn't.
I'll explain it to him. In the meantime, he can go F himself as far as I'm concerned. But anyways, I digress.
All right. So, hey, Peter Voog, after listening to Lochhead, do you have any questions for him?
I mean, I love what he had to say, and I think I would love his perspective on prospecting versus positioning, because one thing that I've learned and really tried to do in my industry and myself, and I think it relates to designing your category, is I think the toughest thing for someone new, whether it's a real estate agent, a mortgage broker, a speaker, an author, is to prospect, and people get burnt out. And I think when you position yourself as the leading authority or as the industry leader, and you position yourself as the trusted advisor of the world's best, I think when you add enough value and you give excellence of service, people will come to you, and you'll create advocates and fans to where you don't have to go do all the prospecting anymore. They come to you. And I've seen that in different industries, Chris, where people have positioned themselves as the best, so now they have consistent customers versus going to chase people. And I think newer entrepreneurs can do that if they did the steps you talked about. Have you seen the difference in prospecting versus positioning, Chris, to where when someone does become the industry leader, it's easier to attract customers versus chasing them? Would you agree?
Absolutely. And the distinction, Peter, that we think about at Play Bigger is the distinction between creating market pull, and that's the objective of category design, versus push, which is about selling and prospecting. Now, the reality is the vast majority of businesses have to do both. There are some businesses that they've created such massive pull, they can live off that pull, and they do very little, if any, prospecting. But that's pretty unusual. Most businesses need to do both. But the important thing I would say, Peter, is most new entrepreneurs focus exclusively on push. They believe in their product, and they believe in their sales capability, right? It's like a macho thing. We've even heard CEOs say, well, we make shit and we sell shit and everything else is bullshit. And they really believe that they have such a great product and such a great sales organization, or they're such a good salesperson themselves, that if they can just get in front of anybody, they'll convince them that they're the right answer. We all know what it feels like when somebody's trying to convince us of something. And so the point being, condition the market to create pull, and you do that through thought leadership. We can talk about different kinds of marketing that really will create that kind of pull. And you meet that pull with the appropriate amount of push. And Peter, I think you're right. There comes a magical point in the life of every successful business where they're doing all this stuff to create pull, and it's not working. They're pushing, and there's that magical time, and if you've ever been part of it, you know this feeling where the combination of trying to create the pull by conditioning the market at the high level and tactically with your sales efforts prospecting to push, you get that boulder to the top of the hill, and all of a sudden it starts to roll downhill, and you can live on a lot more pull and a lot less push, which makes growing your business a lot easier. And for most companies, it also increases their margin and their competitive position because the markets come to them at that point.
They can be more selective too and pick their clients versus like taking anybody. I like that. You said something too about the event business and what their business really is. I was at a small intimate group within the Business Mastery event with Tony Robbins, and it was amazing. But they talked about most businesses don't know what they really do or sell, and he was talking about Louis Vuitton, and I want to bring this up because it's a different articulation, but he said Louis Vuitton doesn't sell clothes. They don't sell, I mean, yes, they sell experience, but they really sell an emotional state. A lot of the material Louis Vuitton uses is the exact same as different Coach and some other stuff that's not as nice. I don't know if I should say that, but it's the absolute truth. But when you buy Louis Vuitton, you have an emotional state that you feel when you have it, which is why a lot of wealthy people buy that. So they know their business is selling emotional states, not products. It's really interesting to think about stuff like that. And when you have that unique positioning, it's easier to market, and you know who you're marketing to, so it's easier to create raving fans as well. So I'm glad you brought that up with the event business. I'm sure we could do that to different businesses as well. When I was in direct sales, Chris, I thought that I sold Cutco. I was part of Cutco, and we did direct sales. I was recruiting. I was in the recruiting business, not the selling business, right? And I was in developing leaders and finding leaders versus selling a product. And when I realized that, I shifted my business plan and my strategy and my marketing, and it helped my results tenfold. So I'm glad you brought that up. Good point. Good stuff.
Yeah, a lot of people get lost in the day-to-day busyness of what the practicality of it is. One of the books I read early in my career that I love, that I know we in the One Life community have talked a lot about, is the E-Myth and Michael Gerber, and the distinction between working on your business and in your business, and really understanding what it is customers want and what they're really buying comes from thinking about and working on your business, not just the making of purses or bags or whatever it is they make, Celeste, at Louis Vuitton. I'm not a customer.
Yeah, either am I, but it's funny. I don't know if I want to feel that emotionally excited spending that much money.
Not on a purse, maybe on a pair of skis, Timmy.
That's funny. I love it.
Tim, you're talking and we can't hear you.
You're on mute again. I wish I can unmute of myself.
Sorry about that, but it was the most insightful thing I've ever said. Hey, before I open it up to Celeste and Gonzalo, Peter, you said something earlier that I just want to make sure I touch on, and that is you talked about finding people outside your industry or outside your sphere that you kind of network with. Where do you go to find the people that you put in your sphere? Probably like when you were with Cutco. How do you go about that?
Well, that was easier because I literally can look at the reports, and I reached out to the top 5 people that were getting the highest results and lived the lifestyle I wanted. So I defined who those top 5 were, because originally I was connecting with people that were okay with mediocre results. I was getting influenced by the people in my same division, and they were okay with the mediocre results. So it rubbed off on me. So when I made a decision to change, I wrote down the top 5 people in my entire company, and I reached out to them relentlessly. I asked them to mentor me, and it helped me cut my learning curve in half. So in my book, I actually give a script on now how I reach out to different people, how I've got a hold of Arianna Huffington and Grant Cardone and Gary Vaynerchuk and Eric Thomas and Brian Tracy and these people. It's the same type of approach. You reach out in a humble way and you add value. You see what you could do to help them, and they would love to. A lot of them would love to give back and help you because that's what someone did for them. So it depends on your industry, Tim, but you have to define what your industry is and only connect with people that you obviously respect the results and would trade places with and have the experience that you're trying to achieve. And I think it helps in any industry, and it's a way to definitely cut your learning curve in half when you're a younger entrepreneur if you're reaching out to those that have already been there and that are playing the game at a higher level than you. And I think it raises your standards as well. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Okay, so we got Gonzalo, who's 17 years old on this call.
Young hustler.
Oh, yeah, young hustler. So how does he add value to Gary Vaynerchuk? What can a young up and comer? How do they approach Peter Voog? How does somebody? You know what I'm asking. How do you add value to somebody further along the road?
So here, I'll give you an example. So I reach out to Tim. Hey Tim, I've heard that you're extremely successful. You've done well. Here's my story of my 7-page story of when I was 8 years old. I was this and this, and I have this mission, and my goal is to change the world. Can I have like an hour of your time? That's one approach. Or the second approach is, hey Tim, I've heard amazing things about you. I've watched some of your Google Hangouts, and one of my favorites was the 3rd episode when you talk about this and this. I've actually shared your Google Hangout with all of my circle of influence. I only have about 1,000 on my email list, but I've tried to share what you've taught to everybody around me. I've also created an article about you on LinkedIn just to get the word out because I really believe in what you do and I believe in your legacy you're creating. Let me know if there's anything else I can do to help you, and I really appreciate what you've done. Thank you.
That's freaking brilliant, Peter Voog.
Which one do you like, and which one are you like, what an idiot, right?
I like number 2 personally.
There we go.
Yeah, I like them both.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go, Chris.
I just wanted to add one little thing to it, Peter. I loved what you said. I think it's bang on. In addition if you're going to ask somebody for advice, make sure you want the advice. You know, I'm a guy who spent 20 years in business, and I hung up my jersey as a player almost 10 years ago, and I've been an advisor ever since. And it's interesting going from, you know, being an entrepreneur, being an executive, to being an advisor to entrepreneurs and executives. And so I get to coach a lot of people today. And one thing I've discovered is that most people who ask for coaching don't want any coaching. What they want is to feel better about what they're already doing or what they're going to do anyway.
Wow.
And so if you're going to reach out to somebody who's successful and ask them in one way or another, whether it's for 5 minutes over a coffee or for a lifetime, to mentor, coach, or advise you in some way, make sure you want to be coached. Because the worst thing for an advisor is to have somebody waste their time who's just going to do what they're already doing. It doesn't mean you have to take all of your mentor or advisor's advice, but you have to be willing to listen. If all you want is validation, I do this every time. When somebody emails me and they want, I get a lot of career advice kind of emails, I send them, I have a template that I just fire back at them that says, hey, listen, I don't want to give you any advice, but I will. But here's what I need you to think about for the next week. Do you really want the advice, or do you just want to feel good about what you're already doing? And if you want to feel good about what you're already doing, go ahead and do that and save you and I the time. And if I hear back from you in a week, I'll assume you really want some advice. So be careful what you ask for, and for the love of God, don't waste their time.
That's brilliant, Chris. All right, Celeste, you ready with your question? You've been hanging on here patiently. What do you got for?
Yeah. Hi guys.
Hi,
so actually, initially listening to your to everything that we've been listening to today, I would ask, how did you, before you really got to where you are now, both of you, in your success, how did you dissolve the limiting beliefs? And when you broke and you had no money and everything else, you had some limiting beliefs somewhere, I would imagine, whether it was around money or what. Chris, I know that when you found, I think after you got out of high school, that you had dyslexia, something like that, right?
Yeah.
So there were some limiting beliefs. You thought you were stupid, which obviously is not true, but it was a belief that you had. So how, before you got to where you are now, you had to get rid of those beliefs in some way, and how did you each do that?
Good question. Do you want to go first, Chris, or you want me to go first?
Why don't you go ahead, Peter?
So good, really good question, Celeste. And he talked about the word, it's conditioning. So I remember my mindset and my limitations were holding me back. So whether I would work 60 hours a week or 100, my results weren't changing, because I was so used to blaming others and blaming my company and my past and my experience and this and this and this. So I think the first step that got my limitation to lower and my confidence up was taking full responsibility for everything that was happening in my life and my current reality. And the next thing I did was I lowered my maintenance friends and people that dragged me down and didn't believe in me, and I hired my growth. I spent more time with my growth friends, of people that believed in me and had a sharper perspective and would help me and guide me towards success. So I lowered my time with, you would be amazed at what people around you's role plays in your mindset. And then I made sure that everything I put in my mind was congruent to my goals and vision. So I asked myself, is what I'm doing today congruent with my goals and vision? And if it wasn't, I would stop doing it. So beforehand, I would hang out with the wrong people. I would watch the news. I would read books that had nothing to do with success, and it kept my limitations the same. So I started every day conditioning my mind, asking questions like, what am I grateful for? What am I going to create today? And then I borrowed other people's belief they had in me until my belief caught up to that. I didn't have as much belief in myself, and the people that were around me gave me the belief, and I also got belief through results. And once I started seeing results, you obviously get a little more belief. Because here's the problem. You have this circle where you have all this potential, and obviously what you can create is massive, is endless, right? But based on what you believe about your potential is the action you take. So I didn't have much belief, so my action was low. and then my results were low, and then it reinforced, oh, you're no good. But if you can really give yourself the best advantage to believe in your potential by your confidence, then you take bigger action, you get bigger results, and it's an upgoing spiral. So I think the last thing is I realized that every choice I made was making me. So everyone has inside them a confidence account, and based on that account is what they accomplish. And most people, they're making choices daily they don't think about, and it's hurting their confidence. And as your confidence goes down, your limitations go up. As your limitations go down, your confidence goes up, right? So I made sure that every choice I made, whether it was getting up early, whether it was eating salad versus French fries, whether it was reading a book versus watching TV, I made sure every choice I made was the tougher choice in the moment, and it helped me gain more confidence, take bigger action, hang out with better people, and it's the process. It's not a result, it's the journey and the process of continuing to better yourself. And I never compared myself to anybody else except who I was the day before, and that really helped me as well, because comparing yourself to others is guaranteed misery, right, as you can imagine, and that's what I used to do. So that's some of the things that helped me. Good question, though. I'm excited to hear Chris's answer.
Take it away, Chris.
Go ahead, Tim.
No, I was gonna say, take it away.
Okay. I think for me, Celeste, it was a lot like what Eminem says, where he says, success was my only MF and option, failure's not. When I was 18 years old, I'd been thrown out of school. I found out when I was 21 I was dyslexic. And I had a low-paying job, manual labor kind of a job. And, I had an angel on one shoulder and a devil on the other. And the voice of the devil was my mother's, God bless her, and saying, you're going to grow up and be a bum. And the angel was the voice of my grandfather, Jack, who said, you're the bestest boy in the world. And I remember exactly where I was. I was walking in a street, up a street, uphill, of course. It was winter, really cold out. I grew up in Montreal, Canada. And I remember sort of feeling that tension between, am I going to waste my life and be a bum, or am I going to believe my grandfather? And I made the decision then. And so I guess my point is, most of the successful people I know, there is a component of desperation to it. The reason a lot of entrepreneurs that we deal with, probably 60%, maybe even higher, are not American-born, the entrepreneurs we deal with in the Silicon Valley. And I often wonder, and this may go back to when Peter and I were discussing earlier, why entrepreneurship's down in America right now. If Americans are too comfortable in a way, and I know the economy hasn't been kind, and there's a lot of the country that's struggling, but there's something about desperation that forces people to go for it. And so whether that's your actual circumstance or the mindset you put yourself in, you have to be in that place where you make a decision that you're going to be everything you think you can possibly be, or you're going to succumb. Legendary is a conscious choice, and having a life that doesn't suck or sucks is a daily unconscious choice. And sooner or later you wake up and you realize, wow, I'm 50 years old and I didn't do anything with my life. That was a slow unconscious choice that happened over time. People who are successful make a daily commitment to go for it, and you just have to make that decision. And the thing that makes me crazy is we live in a country where every single one of us has an opportunity. When I started my first business, I had no contacts, no relationships, no money, no education. I had a great family, a great business partner, and some supportive friends, and that's it. And we live in a country where you can do that, and there are a lot of places in the world where you can't do that. If you're in Syria right now, that's a really hard thing to pull off. Well, we're not in Syria. We're here in America, and we have that opportunity if we make the choice to go for it.
That's great, Chris. Does that answer your question, Celeste?
That does. Thank you.
All right, Gonzalo, one of our youngest members of One Life Fully Lived. Gonzalo, what's your question for Peter and Chris?
All right, so basically my question is, and thank you guys for the opportunity for this. Really appreciate everything. My question was, what things did you have to give up early in your life, or early in your path to become an entrepreneur that most people don't want to give up?
Let's go with Chris. You answered that. Did you hear his question?
I did. That's an awesome question. Here's the thing most people won't tell you. If you want to produce legendary results, work-life balance is BS. There's no such thing. I mean, I worked kind of nonstop for the first 20 years of my career, from the time I was 18 to the time I was 38, and took really no time off. Started a number of companies. The first one was really successful for a while, and then really the giant failure, and I just kept going and going and going until at age 27 I was the head of marketing for a NASDAQ publicly traded company on NASDAQ, and had sold my company to a company here in Silicon Valley, and just kept going. And so the biggest sacrifice is the truth. I did almost nothing but work for 20 full years. I traveled 300,000 miles a year, and I made huge commitments. I'll never forget, being in the technology industry with no education and no technology background. I remember going into a meeting, and a technical guy asked me some questions, and I thought I could just bullshit my way through the answers, and I did. And he just laid me out on the floor because I had no idea what I was talking about. And at that point I realized, wow, this is no joke. I better get smart about this stuff. And I read every damn technical magazine I could read. And you know, I studied like crazy. I read every business book. I read every technology book I could read. I did everything that I could to surround myself with the right people. Anyway, my point is that what most people won't tell you is that if you really want to build that kind of a career and build that kind of a business, at least for some period of time, the notion of work-life balance is ridiculous. You got to dedicate yourself to it, and in some cases, you know, it's 80 to 100 hours a week, and in my case, it was probably 60 to 80 hours a week for the better part of 20 years. Why are you smiling, Tim? You did the same thing, didn't you, buddy?
Chris, what is balance? I don't know what that is. What does that mean?
Yeah.
So good question, Gonzalo. For me, and he hit it right on. I obviously I can't work. I haven't worked for 20 straight years. I was a toddler. But I had a lot of sacrifice when I was 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. When I was in college, that I didn't party. When all my friends were going out because it was the cool thing to do because they wanted the girls and the drink, I was at home studying and writing my goals down because I realized that I had to sacrifice if I wanted the lifestyle few ever attained. And I lost some friends. I disappointed family. I missed a lot. The year and a half and 2 years where I really sacrificed the most when I was working, like you said, 70, 80, 90 hours when I was 22 years old. And I missed a lot of family events. I didn't go to the movies. I didn't hang out all the time. I was in hustle mode and really working hard to build that lifestyle. And the reason why I knew that was the right thing is because I was lucky enough to have a mentor at that time that really shared his wisdom with me. And I think another thing that you ask about what people don't think about sacrificing is you have to deal with a lot of uncertainty and stress sometimes. And I think a high tolerance for pressure and stress is a skill successful people are paid highly for. And a lot of the mediocre mindset people, they can't deal with overwhelming uncertainty and stress. So I think you have to realize two things. One, figure out exactly what you want, and then figure out why. Get clear on that. Two, figure out what you're willing to give up and sacrifice to get what you want, because most people, sadly, they want. They talk all day long, but they don't actually sacrifice enough to ever get what they want because they don't understand or are aware of what really is needed. And like Chris said, there really is no balance. If you want the job where it's like you work in the day and then you forget about it, and when you get home at 5, it's just family, you talk about nothing else, that's challenging, because when you're in a job that you love and you're sacrificing for, you want to talk about it when you get home. So it's almost like it's 24/7. When I was sacrificing the most, I was talking about what I was doing nonstop. I'm sure people were annoyed with me, but it was consuming me. And I think obsession is a good word for entrepreneurs, becoming obsessed with what you do. I've heard Warren Buffett and Bill Gates talk about how they're obsessed with certain things. And I think our society sees obsession as a bad thing, when I think it's a good thing if you really love what you do and you're good at what you do as well. So I missed a lot of events, friendships. I missed being popular and partying, and yeah, I hung out with girls now and then, but it wasn't as much as my friends did. And I remember when I started focusing purely on my business, that's when I was breaking records and loving what I was doing. So I think if you're 17, man, you have an amazing future ahead of you if you play your cards right and realize that you might lose some friends, and while you're sacrificing, it's not going to be normal. You're going to feel like an outcast, and you might be alone some of the time. But if you have a good circle of influence and good mentors, you're going to crush it.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
For sure.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Good luck, buddy.
Thank you.
Knock 'em alive.
Keep us posted.
Alrighty.
I think that's Tim, yeah?
Did Tim leave?
He's thinking about coming. He's gone right now.
Now I see him skiing. Is he about to ski down a hill? Or is that
That's like a shot from his GoPro.
I thought you were going to ski down a hill, Tim.
As Jay Giles said, I must have got lost somewhere down the line. Anyway, hey, I think it's time we wrap this up. I want to thank our special guest, Chris Lochhead from Play Bigger Advisors, Peter Voog, entrepreneur extraordinaire. Please rush out, buy his book. Peter, quick plug for your book. Why should we buy it?
It's called 6 Months to Six Figures, and it's my journey to how I created a six-figure income in a very short amount of time, and I did it in 3 different industries, and I've simplified everything into actionable content, and it's very comprehensive to where if someone applies it and they really follow the steps, they can start making real money as an entrepreneur. So I hope people get it, and I hope it continues to shift our culture. And I love how your camera's moving like that. It's really cool.
All right, you guys, I can't finish this up. Sorry it turned comical at the end, but as you know, it was a heck of a Google Hangout we had here. Please tune in next month, February 10th. We're going to have 3 of our members on. All of us are trying to reach financial critical mass. Some of you are in debt. Some of you are just starting out. Some are well on your way. We're going to have 3 members from our community who are playing the game full out. One is just starting on his way, just bought his first house. One has overcome debt, used to be an employee, just started selling real estate recently, is killing it selling real estate, does a great job with his finances. And the third one, she's just around the corner from reaching critical mass where her passive income is more than what her monthly expenses are, and the game will be over and she can enjoy life. And that's our wish for all of you, is financial freedom. And next month's webinar is all about helping you get there. So you can register for that at onelifefullylived.org. Once again, thanks Peter, Chris, Gonzalo, and Celeste. Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Good night.